Hi everyone, it's Lynn Dion from Pink Whisper Designs. Today we're going to create a really fun bridge card, and if you don't know what that is, I'll show you how simple and easy it is to create, and it gives you a really fun, unique design. And we'll be using lots of new products from the Lawn Fawn 2025 collection. Let's start with the Lawn Fawn Sweet Strawberry set. This is the stamp set. Got the strawberry, a couple of sentiments, some little seeds, some sprinkles, a heart, and some little faces for your strawberries if you wanted to put those on. Those are really cute. Then we've got the coordinating stencil. So we can use our ink pads and a blending brush to do some coloring on these strawberries. And then we have the dies as well. And you've got the strawberry die, that little heart, and then you've got the little die for those sprinkles. I'm going to start off by stamping 2 of the strawberries. I've got some Strathmore Bristol Smooth 100-pound cardstock, and I'm using my VersaFine Onyx Black ink to do that stamping. And then for the seeds on the strawberries, I want to go just a little bit lighter with the seeds. So I'm going to just tap off a little bit of that ink and then stamp it. So it'll be the second generation stamping that I'm using for the seeds, just to make those a little bit lighter, but you could certainly use the first generation if you prefer that. I've got the Lumberjack Plaid and the Festive Berries. These are the Distress Oxide inks from Holtz, and we're going to use these to color this in. So for the strawberries, I'm grabbing that stencil and I'm just using that little opening where the strawberry is. And then I've got a small 1/4-inch round blending brush, and I'm going to pick up that ink and just apply it through that stencil. Now I am going to put a little bit of a darker shadowing on either side of the strawberry. So I'll come in with that Lumberjack Plaid on the left and right sides, and then I'll just kind of pull that in towards the center. If you have too much ink on your little brush, you can always just, remove some of it on your scrap paper as I'm doing there, and then apply more ink. So now I'm starting with the Festive Berries and then adding that Lumberjack Plaid again to each side. And so once we have that done, I'm going to grab the Rustic Wilderness and the Mowed Lawn. These are also Distress Oxides that we're going to be using today. And then I'm going to start off with that lighter color. And I have placed this on my Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station. I put a little tiny bit of adhesive on the back of this paper just to hold it in place, and then I'm using those magnets to hold this down. Makes it really easy to do your stenciling. Nothing's moving around. I don't have to worry about it sliding. And I'm just going to again apply that lighter color and then a little bit of the darker color. And with the darker Rustic Wilderness, I'm coming from the top down. So I'm darkening up that stem a little bit. Now we can go ahead and do the chocolate portion with Scorched Timber and Gathered Twigs. So I'll start off with the Gathered Twigs. And look how easy this is. I love the coloring with this. I haven't really done much of this before, but I find it kind of intriguing that you can easily color your images in. Normally you would have to mask it off with your masking tape in order to do this kind of coloring, but with these stencils it makes it really simple and easy to do your coloring. Again, I'm adding that Scorched Timber to both sides of the chocolate, and then I'll just pull that in towards the center and keep that middle part the lightest so it looks like it has a little bit of a highlight. So let's go ahead and do the second one. And again, these little 1/4-inch round brushes make it really easy to do your blending and to get into these little small areas. So once I have that all done, we can go ahead and grab that set that had the coordinating dies, and we can go ahead and run these through the die cutting machine. I'll tape that down with a little bit of Post-it tape. Just want to take a little time to line that up. And then I'm going to use my Spellbinders Platinum Scout die cutting machine to cut these. So I've die cut both of those. And now let's stencil a background. This cardstock measures 5 1/4 inches by 4 inches. And again, I'm going to add a little bit of adhesive to the back of this and place this down. And we're going to use the layered heart background stencil from Fawn. This is a 3-part stencil, and they are labeled in the upper right hand corner, 1, 2, and 3. We're just going to be using 1 and 2 today, but I will show you what it looks like when you do all 3 of them. So let's again go back to this Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station and then grab some spun sugar and the other 2 colors that we used before, the Festive Berries and the Lumberjack Plaid. So I'm going to start with the spun sugar, and I'm using a little larger blending brush to do the stenciling now. This will go a lot faster. And I'm going to apply that ink to all of these little hearts. And then the next thing we're going to do is grab the Festive Berries to do layer number 2. So let's remove this. Now you could certainly just leave it just like that if you prefer, but we're going to grab layer number 2. And then we're going to go ahead and, as I said, we're going to grab the Festive Berries. So we won't be using the Lumberjack Plaid, but if you were going to do all 3 of these, you might want to have that one out and ready to go. So I like the idea that I can use either layer 1, 2, or 3, or all of them together. In this case, we're just using layer 1 and 2. Do keep in mind that all of the products I'm using today are listed and linked down below and also on my blog. And it does help to support my channel if you use those links. I do receive a small commission, but it is at no additional cost to you. So I really appreciate it when and if you use those links. And now we have that stenciling done, but here is where I wanted to show you, if you added that 3rd layer, you would get this design, which connects a few more of those little hearts and creates almost like a little string of hearts in a couple of places. But I'm going to stop here. And I'm going to quickly heat set that because I want to add some ink around the edges of this panel. And I'm going to start with that spun sugar. So I want to make sure it's nice and dry, so I'm not moving that ink around too much. I really just want to add this nice edge around all 4 sides. I'll go back to that Festive Berries and add that. And I'm not coming in quite as far, just really right around those edges and a little bit more in the corners. I'm going to do some spattering. So I'm going to take that same ink, that Festive Berries ink, put it down on my Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station, and then I'll spritz it with a little bit of water, and I'll take a small paintbrush and I'll spatter this entire panel. Now this will just tie this background together, just makes it a lot more interesting, kind of fills in some of those little white areas. But I also wanted to add a little bit of sparkle to this. So I'm going to grab my Distress Spritz in the Lumberjack Plaid. And you can see that kind of coordinates with some of the inks that we're going to be using today. So I'm going to make sure I shake that up really well. And then I'm going to spatter this. And that is going to give us a beautiful shimmer in this background. So I'll heat set that quickly and set that aside, and then let's create our card panel. So I've got a piece of cardstock that measures 4 1/4 by 11 inches. I'm scoring it at 5 1/2 inches. Now we do need to cut away part of the front of the card to create our little bridge card. So I'm going to line up that score line at the 1 1/2 inch mark. And then with this panel that's left over, I'm going to cut this at 2 1/2 inches. And that extra little panel can be set aside for another project. So let's go ahead and fold on that score line. And that little flap will be the top of our card. And then this portion will be the lower bottom section of our card. So we do need to connect these 2 together, hence the name bridge card. And we're going to do that here in a second. But first, let's cut the layers for those 2 pieces. So I'm going to cut this panel to fit on that top section. So I'll cut this at 4 inches, which it already is, by 1 1/4 inch. Because remember, that top panel now is 4 1/4 inch by 1 1/2 inches. So this will fit right in the center, and it'll leave that pretty white border all the way around the edges. And then we need to do this bottom panel. Now I do want the bottom section of this panel. I want where that, see where that shadowing is down in the bottom. So I want to hang on to that. So we'll cut that at 4 inches by 2 1/4 inch. And again, we'll just set aside that middle portion for another project. So let's go ahead and attach these 2 layers to the front of our card. I've got some Nouveau Deluxe adhesive, and I'll just attach this to the top section. And then for the bottom section, let's go ahead and add this layer. And you do want to make sure everything's going in the right direction when you place these together. And then to add that center section, I'm going to go to the Lawn Fawn Doily Hearts die. I just love this. This is one of the brand new dies. And I'm going to use the Ballet Slippers cardstock. This is a 100-pound cardstock. I will die cut 2 of these. One will be for the outside of the card, for the outside bridge, and the second one will be for the inside of our bridge connector. So I've got my Spellbinders tool in one. I'm just going to remove all those little excess pieces, and then you can see how this is going to go together. So let's start off by adding a little bit of that Festive Berries ink all around the edges of this little doily. And this is just so pretty. I love this. You could do this in like an ivory color and add some of your browns or your tea dye inks just to make it look like an old age doily. So you have a lot of options with this. I just think it's so pretty. So let's go ahead and tack this down. I'm going back to that Tombow tape runner, and that'll just tack it down temporarily just to line it up right at the very bottom of the card. I want to make sure it's nice and straight. And then we can go ahead and attach this first doily to the front of the card. But of course, we don't want any glue in the middle there. We just want to connect it at the top and the bottom. So I'm only going to add glue to about 3 of those little hearts at the top. And then I'll let that dry. And then I'll come back in and I'll add some more glue to this lower portion. So I'm just pointing out about how high I need to come up with that glue. And then we'll just press this in place. And I'm just placing that acrylic block on there until it dries. So once that's dry, I can go ahead and open this up. Let's just grab our adhesive remover and just remove that little bit of tape that we put in there earlier. And now I can go ahead and attach this second doily to the inside of the card. So when we open up this card, you don't have to do this second layer, but I like doing it because when I open up the card, it's just as pretty on the inside as it is on the outside. And it also adds a little bit more stability and reinforcement to our bridge layer as well. So you look at how pretty that is. I just love how that looks. And then what I'm going to do is create a couple of sentiments. So I've got my Pink and Main Magic Anti-Static Powder Brush. I'm going to apply it to that black heavyweight cardstock, again from Lawn Fawn. That's the black Licorice. And then I'm going back to the stamp set and I'll grab the 2 sentiments. One says, I love you, and the other says, so very much. So let's go ahead and stamp these. I'm going to use some StazOn pigment ink in the Snowflake. So this is a nice bright white. And I'll go ahead and stamp that. And then we're going to emboss these. I did decide to stamp that a couple of times just to make sure I had a nice layer of ink on there. And then I'll go ahead and take that to my Ranger Superfine Detail White Embossing Powder. Just going to sprinkle that on and tap off any excess. And then we'll go ahead and heat set that. Once that was done, I'm going to just cut these into little strips. And I'm going to just cut the ends. I'll cut a little V out of each end to kind of give it that little bow tie look. So just on these 2 right-hand ends of these little strips. And then those are going to get tucked in behind each of my strawberries. Now you could play around with this and kind of have your strawberries on an angle or your sentiments kind of on an angle. But in the end, I played around with it and I decided to just do them as straight banners going straight across the card. So let's glue these to our strawberries. And then once these are glued down, we're going to be popping up the strawberry and the sentiment at the same time. I'll grab some 3D foam squares from scrapbook.com, and these are the small ones, and I can go ahead and place these on the backs just to pop these up a little bit, and it won't really show through underneath. You could be kind of careful of that, but I didn't have any problem. It was fine. It didn't go through to the other side. I just placed those around just to pop everything up a little bit. And then I did notice that I had some adhesive left on the back of these strawberries from when I attached them to my Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station to do the stenciling. And I do want to remove that because I don't want that to show through to the inside of the card, just in case. I don't think it will, but for precautions, after all this work, I just want to make sure I remove that adhesive. So now I can go ahead and pop these up. I'm using my Cricut weeding tool to remove the backing. And then for this one, I did decide to add a little adhesive and remove one of those foam squares just so this would lay nice and flat. So let's add some of that adhesive right at the top, and we'll go ahead and glue these two together. And again, you can play around with the angle of these little sentiments. You know, you could have them on different angles. I've got my jelly roll pen in the white, and I'm going to add some highlights to these strawberries just to make them pop a little bit more. And then I went ahead off camera and I tied a little bow. And this is from the Fawn Lawn Trimmings. And this is one of the new colors. It's called Dusty Rose. So I looped it around about 3 times, made a little bow, and I'm going to attach that to the card. I want to make sure that it's nice and flat. So I'm grabbing my reverse tweezers and I'll just clamp that down for a few minutes. And then with my Judykins Diamond Glaze, this will create a really pretty glossy finish on the chocolate part of our strawberries. So I'm going to place that down. It will dry crystal clear, but I thought I would add a little bit of glitter to this. So I'm just sprinkling on a little bit of that iridescent glitter, and then I'll just tap away any excess. And that will dry right in that diamond glaze. I've got a few little hearts embellishments. These I had in my stash, but I will link down below for you some others that are available in pinks and reds, and I will list those down below for you. I'm not sure exactly where I got this set, but it's just one of those little tiny clay hearts. So I placed that on the center of the bow, and now using my Lawn Fawn Stitch Circle Stackables, I'm going to grab this circle that fits right in the center of our little doily. And I'm going to add that same Festive Berry ink around the edges. And then I do want to stamp a sentiment on this. And the reason I die cut this in the shape of the circle is so that it will fit right behind our doily and it won't show on either side when the card is closed. So it won't show at all. It will tuck it right behind that doily. Now let's take a look at this cute little stamp set. This is called Scent with Love add-on stamp set. And it's got these cute little images on it, and it would coordinate really well with strawberry because it's got a box of chocolates, a chocolate covered strawberry, and some other cute items. But for right now, I'm just going to grab that sentiment and I'm going to cut it apart. Again, we can put this back together if we want to. I'm just going to make it nice and easy and cut this apart. And it just says Happy Valentine's Day. You could certainly mask off the words if you don't want to cut it up. Just mask off sections of the word and do your stamping that way. But I did separate that stamp, and then I stamped it right in the center of that circle. And now I'm going to attach that circle to the inside of the card. So what I want to do is I want to line it up, and I'm going to place it upside down on that inside doily. And I just want to make sure that I line it up as straight as I can. We can adjust it a little bit once we close the card. So once I've lined that up, I can go ahead and close that card, which will grab that little circle. And now it should be lined up just right. But again, you can just adjust that with your fingers a little bit if you need to, which is why I use the glue, because that gives you a little time to move it around. And let's take a closer look at this finished card. It's just so much fun. I love this doily. I love this little bridge design. It's just fun and easy to do. You could change this up for any occasion. This little bridge design is great for any kind of occasion, and it does stand up nicely on your table as well. So I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a single video. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.